In this video, we're going to talk about what agencies charge versus what it actually costs. And ultimately, the goal here is to get an understanding of how agency fees are structured, and so that you can potentially bypass them in certain ways, in certain projects where you may not need full agency infrastructure, and just get an understanding of when that might be and when it might actually be prudent to bring an agency on and the infrastructure that comes with it. So let's dive in. Just a little bit of background about me again, and this YouTube channel. This is kind of how I do things here now. Very off the cuff, very unprepared, just more speaking. I collect a few points that I want to touch on, and then we just walk through it together. I've been an agency and a production studio owner for over a decade, and worked with all kinds of brands, a lot that you will know, with projects from $20,000 to multiple $1 million, on campaigns that have global reach that you've maybe seen on TV or seen somewhere, anywhere in the world. Those are the types of campaigns that I've worked on. And the only reason I say that is to give you some idea of the point of view that I'm speaking from and the experience that I can potentially bring, and to help you understand the inner workings of agency life and the agency business model, so that you can potentially bypass some of those fees that I mentioned before. So let's jump into it. So looking here, basically just have the iPad here, and we have 3 points that I want to cover. Hopefully you can read my handwriting. So we're going to touch on the agency model overview, the types of pricing structures that agencies tend to use, and then how to avoid agency fees in future projects that you might have. So let's just start off with number one, agency model overview. So agencies can have multiple different models, and the one that we've deployed inside of my production studio is most likely the one that is more universally used, and definitely the one that can be applied to businesses, and I've started to see being applied inside of businesses and enterprises, so that they can completely eradicate agency services and start to take those things and have more ownership of the creative that they build. And that is essentially, I'm going to call it we'll just call it the producer-led model. And by that, I mean, you don't necessarily have all of the creatives in-house, but what you do have is more of the logistical job roles, such as producers, production managers, executive producers, maybe some creative talent in-house or directors in-house that can come up with the creative ideas that help businesses in their marketing campaigns and basically, ultimately stand out in the marketplace. And this is the model that we have employed in our studio for over a decade now, where we don't have crew members, right? And we outsource crew membership for every or any given project, depending on the scale. And we do that for a couple of reasons. The main reason being that the reason that we started the production studio in the first place was because we wanted to do more of the fun shit that we enjoyed doing in our previous role while running the marketing department and the content creation for a global brand. My business partner and I really enjoyed doing those types of projects, and we said, okay, how can we do this at a larger scale for more companies, more brands, rather than just doing the same types of products and the same type of work over and over again? It felt like, Groundhog Day a little bit there. So the whole genesis of the production studio was the idea of creating a more diverse portfolio. And we really and deliberately stay true to that to this day, because that's why we wanted to start it in the first place. And if we just did what a lot of agencies do, which is extremely niche down and become the home services production studio, or the manufacturing production studio, or the car commercial production studio, you almost get pigeonholed into a creative box that we never really wanted to be in. We wanted to always have that diversity. And since we're the leaders of the business, we get to make that decision. And we've made that decision that we don't want to just work on any given type of genre of project or with any specific industry. We want to keep it as agnostic as possible. Has that potentially limited our growth as a production studio? Maybe. but have we enjoyed the work every day that we've been doing it? Absolutely. So that is the kind of the producer-led model. Again, not necessarily having your cinematographers, your DPs, even your directors in-house, or your editors. Like, editors obviously, it goes the same way for that. We don't want to be pigeonholed, but then you have specific skill sets from your freelancers and your contractors that you employ as an agency that they are more qualified or a better fit for any given project. So if we're working on a car commercial, for example, we have our crew members and our editors and our team that we call upon that have experience in that niche. If we're working on more of a corporate video or an executive leadership video or even like an event video, which we don't do much of anymore, but we would call a different group of people. And because we have made that decision not to continue to work on just one type of project, we have almost had to build our business around the producer-led model, which allows us that flexibility to take on smaller, larger projects and smaller and then different types of projects within that as well. So that's the producer-led model. We really enjoy doing it this way, and I think it's more fun, if you ask me. And then the second one is the fully in-house, we'll call it. And you see a lot of production companies do this when they're scaling. They maybe have some friends who are in the industry and they've enjoyed working together, or they are a group of freelancers that have worked together a lot in the past and say, hey, we can just go ahead and build our own production studio and work with clients directly. We all know the jobs. We all have our particular roles. Maybe one's an editor, one's a director, one's a director of photography, and they start working together and they fulfill the roles of those individuals within the production company, and then they don't have to outsource to freelancers as much. Of course, as they scale and they start to take on bigger jobs, then you might have to think about how hiring different roles and filling out that crew. But when they're working on the smaller, like maybe the projects that keep the lights on, maybe the less glamorous ones, then they can absolutely do most of the stuff in-house. Now, from a business perspective, now all their job is to price it as if they're using contractors, and making sure that they have their margins baked in. And then in theory, they're going to make a very healthy profit margin, because you can assume that they're not taking a crazy salary as if they're just getting started and as they're growing. So there is a really good way for them to do that. But from a client perspective, if you're employing a production studio like that, you have to know that you're not necessarily going to get the best talent for your project. And by that, I mean that they're going to be pulling from their internal capabilities and not the capabilities that are available on the marketplace. Whereas the producer-led model is more focused on hiring the best talent and the most appropriate talent for any given project. And that's where I think the producer-led model shines and is the superior of the two. The fully in-house model is extremely effective if you know what you're going to be working on every week. If you have a specific niche, if you work in a specific industry more than anything else, if you deliver a specific type of project, that makes the most sense, because you're going to probably have a more steady stream of project in the in-house model than you would in the producer-led model. Now, the producer-led model will probably have a higher chance of getting bigger projects, because you're working with that top-tier talent and that very specific talent for that very specific job. But you're going to see a level of infrequency in the jobs coming in, and I can attest to that the producer-led model does lead to maybe a higher paying jobs, but less frequency. And then you've got, we'll just call it the hybrid model, which I think is the goal, right? It's the goal. You have key members that that you use. An editor, for example. If you have a great editor, then you would employ them, and that they have skills that can work across different industries and different types of work. You would employ them, and then they would be able to lower your cost as a production studio, and could deliver. They know the style of editing that you want as a production company, rather than jumping around from editor to editor. You might have individuals and key members of crew in your internal team, and then you will fill in the gaps always with the crew members for any given project. So these I would call the three models that you're going to look at, and what if you're a business, this is what you're going to be dealing with. So going back to our list here, so pricing structures. Again, this is quite waffly. Again, I don't script these things, so we're just going to go through it. You're going to have to bear with me. Hopefully these, once I get a good handle on how these videos are going to come together, they'll start to flow a little better. But yes, pricing structures. So let's take a look here. Let's get this out of the way. Margins. Now, if we look at these three pricing models, I'm going to draw some lines here. It's going to make it extremely messy, but we're going to go with it. So the producer-led model. What we're doing in our studio is we basically have a percentage markup across all of our line items. Some line items, depending on the project, some line items will have a more significant markup than others, and then some will have none at all. Direct expenses, for example, such as hotel rooms and talent, may not have any kind of markup because it's just the way the industry goes. And then others, such as individual crew members, and then editing and post-production, where you have direct cost of goods sold, those will have a certain percentage. And I know some. So we'll look at this percentage here. Wow, the writing is getting worse. So ranging from, we'll call it 20%, and I've seen some upwards of 100%, and that's per line item. So if you're a business, just know that this is what you're going to be looking at, where we're hiring a crew member. Let's say we're paying $100 for a crew member. You could potentially be paying $200 for the cost of that same person that you could have access to if you work to them directly. Why are you paying that? Well, the production company or the agency deserves a cut, and they are spending time. Sometimes instead of an agency paying like a flat fee for their agency services, this is where they're getting their money from. We live in a capitalist market, and they deserve to make money, and they are not for profits. They are not for profit companies, so they deserve to make their money, and I just want that to be seen. Where this becomes a little messy is when, and I have more of a moral issue with this sometimes, when a company comes to us and they have a request of something extremely simple. Maybe it's a very simple testimonial or a very simple just executive interview, and I don't necessarily want to take the job on. And my morals push me more towards, let me just tell you how to do this and how to go directly to the people that you need. And you can do it at just as good of a quality than we would as a production studio. And that's just a moral issue that I think I have. Is more of a personal thing. But these are the things that you don't necessarily see as a business hiring an agency. A lot of the work is not going to be done by the people that you're talking with. Now, the people that you are talking with have most of the time have put the work in and understand how to construct and manage and build the right teams and deliver a product that is of the level that you expect from hiring any given agency. So that's not for nothing, right? That deserves it to be paid for, and they probably deserve their flowers there. But the thing is that you don't always need that level of infrastructure and that level of experience and that level of involvement from an agency that you're going to be paying regardless of how they assemble a budget or a proposal for you. You might be looking at a number on the proposal. It might say $20,000. That agency could have $4,000 in expenses associated with that. And now I have issue with that when that is in fact the case. And this is why I've created my school community and have consulting and coaching offers that essentially are for this section of businesses that want to avoid those unnecessary agency markups, and then just handle that 80% or 70 to 80% of jobs that don't actually need all of this agency infrastructure. So So this is pricing. This is option one for models. The fully in-house model is again very similar to the above, but you're probably going to be looking at a smaller markup. I don't know, like give it another range, like 10 to 50 maybe, because they can afford to. Their expenses are less. And then the hybrid model again similar, but you're probably going to be more in line with what's being done up here. So again, you can see how a job, and especially once you start getting into the higher numbers, I don't know, $100,000, let's say, $100,000 in costs for actual direct costs for a project can easily turn into, 120 to 200K. Now, the question you have to ask yourself is what does it cost for you to not know how to bridge this gap in between these two? How many projects are you doing per year that fall within, the six-figure plus range? And then, how much money are you leaving on the table, knowing that 80% of the jobs out there now, especially now, can be done with internal people managing productions that just need to fill the knowledge gap between, this number and this number. And that's, there's right there is $100,000. And I know this is all kind of, wow, my writing is awful. Now this is all theoretical, right? But these are real examples of things that I've seen in the past. I've turned down hundreds of thousands of dollars in business over the years just because of this and the moral issue that goes along here. I know it's a business, but I can't get over the fact that I could potentially charge, once you look at like the actual numbers, that we could potentially be making 80% margins on any given project. And when I can just so easily teach and help businesses understand the fundamentals behind what it takes to execute a project of that level. So going back to our list here. Okay, so how to avoid agency fees. Now this is nothing crazy. I've touched on it already. You need to think and act like a professional studio. And when I say that, I'm talking more the producer-led model. This is what you need to implement into your business to either save hundreds of thousands of dollars a year if you're already employing an agency, or create content at a level that would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars if you were to go the agency route. Now, it's still going to cost you money because you're still acting as the producer or the executive producer or however you want to see it, but you are completely eradicating all of this markup that we spoke about earlier. This is just going away. Bye-bye. And that is your advantage by implementing internal production or internal studio capabilities into your business. You don't need to hire anyone new full-time. You need to hire a competent marketer, or you can use one of your existing competent marketers to implement these internal production capabilities and basically eradicate all of that margin entirely. It doesn't take a lot of time. You can also go directly to a freelancer producer who will take even more of that slack off your back. But that having a key fundamental understanding of how a studio operates is the way that you can save thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars per year in creating high quality content. Now, I'm not just talking about creating crappy things that a videographer might create. This is acting and preparing and pursuing projects like a professional studio, like a professional agency. There's ways to do this internally, and I can tell you for a fact that some of our biggest clients over the years have moved towards this internal production studio model where we get calls now if they, maybe want to use our studio, or if they need to just fill out the crew and need specialized skill sets. That's when we will get our call now. they have their internal producers, they have their internal content studio handling their big campaigns. And I'm not just talking the things that used to get sent out to the big agencies, the Madison Avenue guys. Those are now being taken off their plate completely and handled internally. With the emergence of like consumer AI and other tools and just general knowledge of the industry, businesses are already like taking some of the best producers in the freelancer market and hiring them full time. And this is just really like bridging the gap and completely like deleting the middleman that is the agency. And this is where it's going. There's no getting away from it. AI again has completely changed everything, and businesses need to get ahead of the curve here and really build out their internal capabilities so that they can stand out from their competitors while their competitors are completely preoccupied with all of this AI generated imagery. Everything's going to look the same over the next 5 to 10 years as people are kind of getting their feeling with AI. The real stories and the real content is going to stand out like a sore thumb. And that is the only way that people are going to be able to, or businesses are going to be able to generate trust going forward, because AI stuff is going to just blend in. People are going to be judgmental of the stuff that is AI. If it looks even very, very slightly AI, people are going to assume that it is AI. And there's just no getting that trust back once it's gone. Creating real stories with real people, real customers is the way that you're going to generate authentic trust. And the internal production studio model is the way that you're going to be able to do it and keep up with the big guys, because you're not going to be spending what they're going to be spending by sending things out to agencies. You're going to be able to create things at a fraction of the cost while maintaining the quality and, winning. So that was quite long-winded. My chicken scratch is all over the place, but hopefully you can take something from it. Obviously, I have my school membership in there. It's a free community right now. I don't think it's always going to be that way, but get in there, introduce yourself. I'll be in there every day. If you have any questions or want to just chat about this type of stuff, I'm happy to have a conversation. Put my website down there as well if you want to set up a call. But yeah, this is the future. This is video production 2.0, and just be ready for it. And I'm happy to guide you along the way as well. All right, cheers, bye.